I was just like, I'll get down there and I'll find an apartment and I'll start living in it. For the best advice about moving to Mexico, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I upload a new episode every Thursday. I am Alex, the backpacking brunette. I moved to Mexico in 2017 and I have called Querétaro home ever since. We're going to be answering your questions about moving to and living in Mexico. And I'm also going to be sharing some interesting tidbits that I have learned recently about renting and buying property in Mexico. I want to share a few things that we have learned, that I learned in Yvonne's presentation last night to the Move to Mexico membership about renting and buying property in Mexico. So the first one up, we talked about fiadores versus the poliza juridica. Now, if you've seen my videos about renting in Mexico, talking about my experience renting in Mexico, one of the things that I have shared time and again is how surprised I was about having to have a fiador to rent in Querétaro. Now, a fiador is a guarantor. It's basically the person that is on the hook for your rent if you skip town, and they have to be a property owner in the city where you are planning on renting. So for example, here in Querétaro, if you're going to have a fiador, they have to own property here in Querétaro. So it's not just something that anybody can do. And of course, not everybody's going to be willing to sign on to be your fiador, because there's got to be obviously that trusting relationship between you and that person. So, okay. What's a person to do if you are a foreigner moving to Mexico and you don't have someone who can sign on your behalf to be your fiador? I know that that's the case for a lot of people that move down here. Something that's becoming more popular is a poliza juridica. Now, what this is, you can do this in lieu of having a fiador. So if you don't have someone who can be your fiador, this could be a good option for you. And what a poliza juridica is basically, it's a group of lawyers that kind of act as a liaison between the renter and a landlord. So like I said, this is becoming more popular in Querétaro, where more foreigners are coming to live here. And basically what they do is they conduct a background check. They research you to make sure that you are a good and trustworthy renter. So what are they going to look into? They're going to look at your bank account statements, probably the last 3 bank accounts, and they're going to be looking to make sure that your rent doesn't exceed whatever the rent will be, won't exceed 25% of your monthly income. That's the benchmark. Now, if you're moving down here on savings, obviously you don't have a monthly income. What they're going to be doing is dividing your whole savings by a year. So they'll divide it by how many months are in a year? They'll divide it by 12 months and make sure that you meet the criteria. So they're going to look into that. They're also going to ask for references, which I thought was pretty interesting, because those references are going to be in your home country. There's always somebody in the office that speaks English, and they're going to be making phone calls or sending emails back to your home country. And they're going to be those references can be friends, family, business partners, whoever. You got to have 5 of them. And the other thing that they're going to look into is you have got to be a resident. You've got to have either your temporary or your permanent residency. If you're going to go the route of a poliza juridica, then that you will probably need to have your residency, either your temporary or your permanent residency, because those rental contracts aren't going to be for any less than a year, and they want to make sure that you're going to stick around. So it's only in really rare cases, probably never, that they would do the poliza juridica for a tourist. One last thing that I really wanted to touch on was this. I mentioned that one of the requirements is to show your last 3 bank account statements. Now, this was really interesting thing, a really good reminder that Ivan Pavan of Host Relocation shared last night in our event for the Move to Mexico membership. She gave out a little warning about closing your US bank accounts or closing your bank accounts, in whatever country you're moving to Mexico in. Now, I know on a lot of people's to-do list when they are getting ready to move to Mexico, one of the things on their to-do list is to, get your finances in order. That's what I always recommend to people. And for a lot of people, that is downsizing. So you're closing out credit cards. Some people have more than one checkings account, savings account, and you are just downsizing, closing things out. And I know a lot of people, they opt to open a Charles Schwab bank account. That's something that I always recommend. I recommend opening a Charles Schwab account because you get reimbursed for ATM fees. It's just a great, great card to have if you are spending a lot of time abroad. So what happens basically is what I'm saying with all of this. What happens is people close out all their old bank accounts and they've just got their new Charles Schwab account. And then they get to Mexico and people are asking for bank account history. This is also true if you're applying for residency. You've got to show economic solvency and people want to see 6 or 12 months worth of bank statements. And if you just close down all your old accounts, you might not have access to those bank statements anymore. So this is a reminder to all of you. Ivana reminded us last night, and now I am reminding all of you that if you're planning on closing out bank accounts, make sure that you have PDFs of those bank statements going back 6 months or at least a year, because they might come in handy when you are in Mexico. JT says, can you avoid the need for a fiador by paying the rent in advance? Would it be unwise to do this? Thanks. You know what? In Mexico, I always say it never hurts to ask. I know a lot of people have tried to get around the fiador with paying in advance, and who knows? A landlord might go for that. So I definitely suggest giving it a shot. If you end up having to do a poliza juridica, just so you know, JT, it takes about a week to do. So it's not like you're waiting a huge long time for it. That's something that I was worried about, but it takes about a week from the time that they receive all of your documents. And the cost, I know it sounds like, oh my gosh, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign, because lawyers, but in reality, Yvonne told us that it costs between 30 and 50% of 1 month's rent. So if you had 12,000 peso rent, it would cost maximum 6,000 pesos, which in dollars would be that's a lot of math for during the live stream. A little less than 300 US dollars, so around 290 US dollars. I love these renting in Mexico questions, because I think this is such an important thing to know about before you're coming down to Mexico, because like I said, I had no idea about the fiador requirements. I was just like, I'll get down there and I'll find an apartment and I'll start living in it. So Lisa asks, what is usual to rent? 1 month and deposit, 2 months rent. And Yvonne told us last night that the standard here in Mexico is deposit, which is 1 month's rent, and your first month's rent. Frida asks, how much is rent in Querétaro for a 2-bed, 2-bath house or an apartment in a secure place? There's a lot of different prices out there in Querétaro, but I can definitely share what Taylor and I pay here for living in the Centro Histórico. And we have a 2-bed, 2-bath house, and we also have a big office type space. I have an old apartment tour on my YouTube channel, one of the very first videos that I ever put out. It's about our apartment and cost of living. This is more of a house than an apartment. I'm never sure what to call it really, but it's pretty big. It's in the Centro Histórico, and we pay a little less than 12,000 pesos per month, which comes out to, I've got the calculator out now, $587 USD. Also, another thing to note, Frida, is that our rent has gone up every single month. Or excuse me, every single month. Oh my God, that would be terrible. Every single year that we have lived here for inflation is what the landlord tells us. So our first year living in Querétaro back in 2017, our rent was exactly 10,000 pesos a year, and now it's a little less than 12,000. So we're coming up on our 5th rental contract. So just something to keep in mind, especially if you are moving to Mexico on a fixed income. Alex asked about the monthly grocery budget. I actually have a video on my channel that I made in February, I think, of last year, talking about our monthly expenses. And I'll admit it, Alex, there were a lot of Uber Eats happening that month. But I've actually been thinking about our monthly grocery budget because this month we haven't really been ordering from Uber Eats at all. I've been cooking at home a lot. And I would say that every week we probably spend between 1,000 and 1,500 pesos on like supermarket type stuff from an order from the supermarket. We usually place an order with Rappi, which is an app here in Mexico, and we get our groceries delivered to the house. And then during the week, we're getting stuff like chicken, maybe little produce things, avocados, papaya from places in our neighborhood. And I would probably say we spend around maybe like 400 pesos on that kind of stuff every week. That's for 2 people. I feel pretty comfortable saying we spend 2,000 pesos a week for 2 people. So that's like $100. And I mean, I'm sure that we could spend less than that. That's buying whatever we want. So that should give you an idea of our monthly grocery budget. Margie says, love the Move to Mexico membership. Thank you so much for all you both do. So much information. All right, we have Scott say, another plug for the Move to Mexico membership. I wouldn't be here living in Morelia without Alex's incredible support and resources. Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate it. This is a membership that I have for people interested in moving to Mexico. And we also have some members who are living in Mexico already. We've got a bunch of great benefits for the membership, including exclusive Q&A videos. We also have monthly Mexico mixers, and those are just a casual social hour that we do via Zoom. And it's a great way to kind of jumpstart your social life before you move to Mexico. A lot of our members have met in real life. Here in Querétaro, we meet up every single Tuesday for dinner with the members that are here. That's super fun. And a new feature that I have been loving, we have the guest presentations that we have been doing every single month, having different presenters come in. So if you've been thinking about trying out the Move to Mexico membership, check out the link for more information. Glenn says, any advice on health insurance would be greatly appreciated. Actually, for the Move to Mexico membership, we have an hour-long interview with the CEO of Guardian Insurance here in Mexico. And one of the things that he says, Antonio Trejo, is that while some things are very affordable in Mexico, the random doctor's visits, prescription medicine. I've had a bunch of stuff done to my teeth, cleanings, cavity filled. I did Invisalign. Well, I have a video explaining all the prices for that and how much money I saved. It was wild. Okay, so what I'm saying with all of this, Glenn, is that yes, there are affordable things in Mexico, but what Antonio Trejo said in the interview that we did with him for the Move to Mexico membership, he said that still anything, a major diagnosis, a major medical happening, like a heart attack, could still set you back $50,000-$60,000 USD. So health insurance is important to have down here. A really interesting thing that Antonio said in the interview, and I included this little clip in my video about the worst advice for moving to Mexico. Something that he said in the interview that I thought was really interesting was that if you are thinking about, let's say you're in your 40s, your 50s, you've got great health now, and you're thinking about moving to Mexico, you're thinking maybe that's where you want to retire. He said that if you are in a financial position to do so, that you should consider getting a healthcare policy for Mexico now while you have that clean bill of health. So you're covered for anything that does pop up down the road, or anything that does happen down the road. You are already covered. So that is something to think about, just because the policies in Mexico, I mean, yeah, $1,000 a year is still, $1,000 is a lot of money, but compared to healthcare coverage in the US, $1,000 a year, it could be feasible. So I wanted to talk about the RFC because I know that this has been kind of a hot topic. This is something that Yvonne touched on last night in our Move to Mexico membership event, and I wanted to share it with you. So here is the deal with an RFC. So basically, an RFC is your tax number in Mexico. The SAT, which is basically the Mexican IRS, if you're from the US, SAT has been saying that everybody in Mexico over the age of 18 needs to have an RFC, needs to have a Mexican tax number, essentially. So that is Mexicans, and that is temporary and permanent residents living in Mexico. So everybody needs to have a tax number now. Basically, Mexico in a lot of different areas. Immigration is one of them. It sounds like the tax department is another one. They've been overhauling their systems, digitizing, modernizing, what have you. And that's what's happening with the RFC. Okay, so you need an RFC if you want to buy a house in Mexico, if you want to buy a car in Mexico, and this is like the kind of the reason that a lot of people are like, I really need this appointment now. If you want to open a bank account in Mexico, you now need to have an RFC to do so. So how do you go about getting an appointment with the tax department, getting an appointment with SAT to get an RFC? So you make the appointments, but right now the system is super overloaded. Like I said, it is this is not just the Mexican government saying that foreigners need to have this. This is the Mexican government saying that Mexicans also need to have this. So there's a major backup happening right now of 2 to 3 months. So if you are thinking about moving to Mexico, thinking that you're going to buy property, thinking that you're going to need to buy a car, have a bank account, anything like that, then this is something to start thinking about now. But remember, you won't be able to get the RFC until you have your residency, because you've got to have the CURP first. So think about that with your timeline for moving to Mexico. The last thing I want to say about the RFC is just that don't freak out if you see you've got to have an RFC. The Mexican government is saying that you have to have this number. Yes, the Mexican government is saying that you have to have this number if you want to do any of these financial things in Mexico, but they're not going to stop you on the street and ask you for your RFC. That's not what this is about. I know for me personally, it's not something extremely high on my to-do list, just because I do not have a Mexican bank account. Our plans for buying a car are probably on hold until at least the fall. This is not very high on my list. As far as opening a Mexican bank account, a lot of people will ask me, do I need to open a Mexican bank account if I'm living in Mexico? And in my opinion, in my experience, my own personal experience, no. I have lived in Mexico for almost 5 years, and I do not have a Mexican bank account. I just have the Charles Schwab account, and it's been enough for me. If I have to do some sort of transfer between my bank and a Mexican bank, I will use Wise. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. I'm Alex from backpackingbrunette.com. Thanks for watching.